Okay, so the second part of this kind of revision session and videos, you also had a City Lights booklet that looked like this. There's not much of this that we want to kind of go over. It's quite a short project, but a couple of things I'll just highlight for you. Around about here, you kind of started looking at some CAD CAM. Where you designed your kind of first you did a homework where it was you had to draw it, but then you did it on a computer in a program called 2D Design. So you would have got this by taking an image off of line and sort of contouring it and turning it into, or maybe vectorizing the image. And so you used a process called CAD, which is computer aided design, to do that. And what we're really looking at here with CAD, and then the CAM, which was the computer-aided manufacture, i.e. the laser cutter, which we're looking at the advantages and disadvantages for why you might use CAD CAM. And I've listed just some here. So for you, you could edit your design. As a teacher, we still have your designs, and so you could go back and re-edit them and edit them again and again, and you wouldn't necessarily have to do all that work again if you needed another version, or you wanted to change it slightly. And that is an advantage of using CAD, computer-aided design, when designing. Another advantage is you can make your designs very accurate with the measurements. With our laser cutters, we can get right down to 0.1 of a millimeter, and in increments that wouldn't be unusual. With the 3D printers, similar. 0.1, 0.15 is the kind of tolerances we often use of a millimeter, so they're very accurate. That's the second advantage. And another advantage might be that you could send your designs across the world. Just this week, I sent a laser cut design to somebody, to a company in London, for them to cut it out in metal, because we cannot laser cut in metal in a workshop. And I could just email that across, and then he can cut it out in metal, or she can cut it out in metal, and they can send it back to me in the workshop. So sending your designs easily across the world through email is an advantage. The disadvantage of an advantage now, or yeah, let's go for disadvantage. Disadvantage of using CAD here. Looking at CAD, it requires skill. Usually, it's quite a steep learning curve, but it requires skill to use the software. All right, that software can be expensive, not always. As a student, you actually have it for free, but you can download it at home for free, what we use. But generally, companies pay a lot of money for programs like AutoCAD. Architects have to spend a lot of money on that. And then also you can sometimes lose file. They can become corrupted, or if you don't back them up properly, or you can even be hacked on the extreme version of things. So these are all disadvantages with working with CAD as a kind of medium for you designing. Then we get to CAM, the kind of machine side of things. We have laser cutters and 3D printers. So here we're looking, the advantages are the accuracy of build that we're looking at here. I've spoken to you about the tolerances we already use of 0.1 of a millimeter. The speed of a cut on a laser cutter, that cuts it out and etches it very, very quickly compared to how long that would take me by hand. And then also the repetitive accuracy, which we've spoken about previously already, for commercial purposes. So if you want to sell it in a shop, you want to make them all exactly the same, and we can achieve that with CAM. Okay, the disadvantage is those machines are very expensive to buy, so it is an expensive setup. You often need trained personnel, people who know how to, and engineers who know how to use those machines. So there is an element of training. Machines can, they do often require maintenance to keep them working well, and they can obviously become broken. And also some people also might mention the disadvantage being that where workers and skilled engineers used to make these products, they may lose their jobs through the use of CAD CAM. So that's the advantages and disadvantages of CAD CAM, which you should be able to refer to. Moving on through your booklets, we kind of got to making our work out of plywood and with some hardwood called sapele. How we joined those two woods was a process of just gluing and using something called PVA glue, which we might come back to a bit later just to refer to again. But PVA glue was what we used. And so, yeah, you went through here and we used something called plywood, which again we'll come to in a minute. Finishing the woods, it's important to know that you may or may not have had time to finish your woods, but you could use oil or a wax and to actually finish and protect them from water spillage or maybe just humidity in the air. So those are two good finishes that you could put onto them. So yes, we'll just leave that there. And the last thing, let me just see if there's any other little bits along here which you might need to know. No, that's all there is there. So I'm just going to move on to one other part of your kind of revision. I've just found this page and I think it's important just to highlight a couple of things just to make sure we're clear. You won't have used all these tools, but I'll just highlight this one, which is the PVA glue, which is wood to wood. The finishes that you could use for wood: varnish, oil, and wax. This being a pine, your hardwoods here, which are different ones which are labeled, okay, and what we used, which is plywood. And it's important to know the advantages and disadvantages of plywood. And I would just err on a couple of advantages here, that it's quite a stable material. I'll put that as a B, not a P. It's quite a stable material in the sense that it's not going to warp or cup or kind of crack so easily as maybe a pine or a hardwood might. So that's a really good advantage. The second advantage is that it's quite a strong material compared to a softwood, pine, or hardwood. And another good reason is that you can get it in different kind of shapes. You can get it in really large shapes, maybe 1 meter by sort of 2 meters, or isn't unusual for plywood to come in. Whereas it would, especially in the thickness of this, if this thickness of this plywood was only something like 12 millimeters, you could easily get that in 1.2 meters by sort of 2.4 meters, and you wouldn't be able to get something that thin in a pine or a hardwood or softwood. So those are just 3 good advantages: stability, the strength of the material, and in particular I would err in saying the strength of the material in all directions. That's very important for the plywood. Those kind of, the first layer will have its grain going this way, but the second layer will have its grain going this way, that kind of second layer underneath, and then the third layer another way, and they're all 90 degrees to each other, so that it is very strong in all directions. The only real wood joint that you might need to kind of refer to, only a couple of ones. These 3. This one is a rebate joint, generally used and created with a router, but this is a rebate joint. This is a butt joint, source of many jokes in our classrooms, but it is a butt joint. And lastly, this one is a mitre joint, and it's really referring to a 45-degree angle. So where you see one of those 45-degree angles here, we'd call that a mitre joint. And just make sure you remember these, because you might have to annotate or refer to some wood joints and be able to be comfortable with those names. Okay, and the last thing I will just kind of explain is that you, in fact, I'll do that in another video. I'll stop this here. Make sure you've got all of that complete for yourself.